Adding details to your starfish. So a lot of starfish you're going to see have different textural elements or dots to give them that more lifelike feel. So I'm going to show you a couple of different options. What I've done is I went and made a bunch of different balls, some different sizes. All you have to do to make a ball is pinch off some clay, pinch it a little bit in your fingers, and then your hand is naturally rounded. So with your index finger, you can just roll the ball in your palm. I would say if you're going to make a lot of these, you do need a container where you can keep the lid on so they don't dry out super quickly. And then when you have them made up, you can decide how you want them to look on your piece. So I wanted a couple bigger ones at the top of my starfish. Now, remember, if I just stuck these on like this, they're going to fall off as they dry. So you need to, once you know where you want everything, you're going to scratch up and then you're going to add your slip. You don't need a lot of slip and then push down. So do this. Because we are also going to do another technique, because right now this doesn't look very natural. So we're going to work on smoothing this out to make it look a little more natural. Okay, and then I'm going to take my fingers and I'm going to gently press down. So I remember I wadded that paper towel up. I'm going to keep that under the starfish to support it. This one's a little too big. We're going to do a different one. And then water is going to be your friend for this, because right now it doesn't look like they grew off of the starfish. It kind of looks like I just plopped them on there. So I'm going to get my hands wet and I'm going to run my finger with water over my little balls that I made to kind of smooth out the clay and smooth out the sides. And then it'll start to kind of blend in, if you will. So this is also why your clay, these little guys still need to be kind of workable. If they're a little too dry, it's going to be hard to blend them and get them adhered to your starfish. So before this video, I went and made up all the little balls. So you would do that, scratch up your area so you can work a little more efficiently. Instead of make a ball, scratch it, add your slip, and I'll put the container on. I can use this for something else. And then I'm going to come in and put these on. And then I'll do my smoothing like I showed again. Now this looks like a little bit more of a dimensional starfish. But you may want, if you notice starfish pictures, have a lot of little dots also. And this is where your slip is going to be a friend of yours. So some of you have slip bottles, so you're just going to use the slip bottle. Others of you have slip in your like little containers. So what you're going to do if you have slip in your container is you're going to get a plastic bag. You're going to scoop some out, and then you're going to snip a little hole in the corner, because what's going to happen is we're going to use this. It's almost like piping a cake, where you can squeeze out the slip very gently to create dots. So you can see I'm practicing on my hand. I suggest you practice on your hand or your mat or a scrap piece of clay, because then if you don't like it or you're getting the hang of it, we can just wipe it off. So then, and the same thing with the slip bottle, because you don't want to get anything stuck. So I'm going to practice on the mat until I get a nice little consistency. You see that up there? Yeah. And then, so the slip bottle, I have to squeeze a lot harder. I'm not sure if I like that or not. Let me Then what I'm gonna do is I'll pick a design that I want. So I know I want dots all the way around. And then the nice thing about the slip trailing, if there's something you don't like, it easily brushes off. So you could go round and round and round. You can make lines. You go down the starfish. Now the trick is, this is your very, 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 very last step, because the slip, it's your clay glue, it's mushy. If you were to wrap this and put a wet paper towel on it, what's gonna happen? You should have answered. It's just gonna get mushed again. So this is why it's one of your last steps. If you do decide to do the slip trailing or adding all the little dots, you should put this in your bin, so then you don't have to worry about adding a rag or a wet paper towel or having a bag kind of smush your design. So that's something I would ask you to think about and consider. So the dots, that's how you're gonna get all the little dots. So you can decide however what type of pattern you want. Do you want to go in circles around the dots that you created and create like a radial pattern? So what I would do is just let this sit for a little while before I put it back in my wrapping or back in my container off to the side. This was another starfish I worked on. Similar idea as the dots. So instead of doing little balls, I did a really skinny coil. I scored and slipped it on, and then I went through and smoothed with my fingers, just like I showed on this starfish. So it's going to be dependent upon what starfish you like, what you choose, what designs you want to do, details, all that. Some of you may not like the slip trailing. You don't want as textural or as bumpy. So another thing you can do is come in with any of the tools that you have or a mix of the tools. So that modeling toothpick is a good little way to add little dots details. I find, doing a mix of the big dots with a pencil. I'm just going to work around the spines of each of these. As I start to repeat and press over and over again in similar spots, I then create a really nice textural element. So while you have the dots, it becomes a little more lifelike. After I've come in and done all the dots, I like to soften them, and that gets rid of all the clay crud. So a very, very light rub of the sponge. So it's not as harsh. And this could be another version of a starfish for you. If you wanted to go in and add even more details, you could come in and do a little bit of a slip trailing. Again, this is entirely up to you, but this is how we combine all these elements of sculpting. So I'm going to play around with the squeeze bottle, and the more steady I am and the more I squeeze, the larger of a dot I can create. Once all those little slip drops dots dry, you can choose to leave them like that, but they do land up being pretty pointy, which then turns sharp. For me, I don't like that it's sharp, so I will come in and with a very, very lightly damp sponge, brush them or run over them to smooth out the top of the dots so that they're not pointy. You can also, should you choose, if some of the dots aren't thick enough or high enough for you, you can add slip on top of this. So you can create like a double dot. But this will soften those edges. So there's two different